Crimson Dawn, The Last Alchemist, a world ravaged by supernatural forces, faces a new era of terror. Witness the rise of the Necromancer, Dr. Stephen LeStat, a genius-turned-undead mastermind, as he commands an army of grotesque undead mutations against the fearsome alpha werewolf and its legion. Amidst this chaos, the Human-Vampire Alliance, armed with ancient knowledge and modern tactics, struggles to survive. Dive into a tale where science meets dark magic, where battles rage between reanimated abominations and undead beasts, and where the thin line between life and death is blurred. Crimson Dawn, The Last Alchemist, a gripping saga where every choice could either spell doom or offer a glimmer of hope in a world engulfed by the shadows of war. Chapter 1. The Necromancer's Experiment. In the ghostly silence of an abandoned city, a figure moved through the ruins with purpose. The Necromancer, a being transformed by the zombie virus into an entity of dark intelligence, walked among the fallen bodies of countless undead. These remnants were the casualties of brutal clashes between vampires, werewolves, and their own kind. He inspected the lifeless forms with a clinical eye, selecting parts with meticulous care. As he gathered the chosen pieces, a crude cart, pulled by two hulking zombies, rumbled into view. The Necromancer nodded, and the zombie drivers coated the collected body parts with a greenish, viscous substance. The liquid seemed organic, yet unnatural, pulsing with an eerie luminescence. Stepping back, the Necromancer observed the transformation that began to unfold. The coated bodies convulsed violently, then started to rise again. The scene that followed was both horrific and fascinating. Some of the bodies began merging, creating grotesque amalgamations of flesh and bone, larger and more formidable than any typical undead. Others sprouted additional limbs, transforming into spider-like creatures that scuttled away with surprising agility. A few stood apart, their eyes flickering with a newfound awareness, suggesting a heightened level of intelligence. These beings looked around, taking in their surroundings with a sense of purpose and understanding. A subtle, almost imperceptible smile crossed the Necromancer's lips, a disturbing sign of satisfaction. Turning away from the grotesque spectacle, he began his journey back to his lair, a stronghold filled with dark experiments and forbidden knowledge. The chapter closed with the Necromancer's silhouette disappearing into the distance, leaving behind the newly risen abominations to roam the desolate city. This opening to Crimson Dawn, The Last Alchemist, set the stage for a tale of unspeakable horrors and the relentless pursuit of forbidden powers, blurring the lines between life, death, and something far more sinister. Chapter 2. The Genesis of the Necromancer. Years before the world succumbed to chaos, Dr. Stephen LeStat, a renowned biologist specializing in evolutionary genetics, worked tirelessly in his laboratory. His research delved deep into the mysteries of genetic manipulation and the evolutionary principles that governed life. He explored the boundaries of DNA sequencing, gene splicing, and the potential for altering the very essence of living organisms. As cities began to fall under the shadow of the werewolf curse, Dr. LeStat was summoned for his expertise. Tasked with finding a cure for the lichen affliction, he plunged into intensive research. His discoveries, however, led to a troubling conclusion. The curse could not be cured, only altered. He developed a virus, a genetic concoction that, when introduced to a werewolf system through a bite, would transform the werewolf into a shambling zombie. This discovery sparked intense debate among his team. Dr. LeStat, aware of the potential consequences, argued vehemently against its use, fearing it would unleash further catastrophe upon humanity. Amidst the turmoil, Dr. LeStat's laboratory was abandoned as the werewolf onslaught overwhelmed human defenses. He was evacuated to a secure military base, but refused to continue his work on the virus, adamant that it should not be unleashed. However, fate took a grim turn when the virus was released into the world, spreading uncontrollably. Within days, it reached the military base where Dr. LeStat resided. In a cruel twist of fate, he was bitten, but rather than succumbing to a mindless undead state, he retained his consciousness. The transformation into the undead necromancer could be attributed to his intimate involvement with the creation and handling of the virus. Over time, Dr. LeStat's intelligence not only persisted, but grew in a direction dominated by death and decay. His undead form fostered a fascination with necromancy, while his knowledge of genetics and biology twisted into something dark and unnatural. As the chapter closed, a flashback showed Dr. LeStat in his human form, a man dedicated to science and understanding, slowly transforming into the figure now known as the Necromancer. His visage morphed, reflecting the grim reality of his new existence, a twisted version of his former self, a being at the intersection of life, death, and the darkest realms of scientific possibility. Chapter 3. The Father of the Damned. In the heart of the undead city, the figure of Dr. Stephen LeStat, now the Necromancer, stood atop a crumbling building, gazing over his vast Brest and macabre kingdom. His transformation had not only altered his form, but also his perspective towards the legions of the undead that roamed the streets below. To him, these creatures were more than mindless entities. They were his flock, his children, birthed from the chaos he inadvertently helped unleash. The Necromancer felt a deep, paternal empathy towards his undead creations. By creating the virus, he had become their progenitor, a father figure in their grotesque existence. This sense of responsibility drove him to continue his work in evolving and enhancing his undead horde. He saw potential in each twisted form, each aberration, viewing them as works of art in a gallery of the macabre. The loss inflicted upon his creations by the Alpha and its undead werewolves had not gone unnoticed. Many of his undead had fallen prey to the ferocious pack, culled brutally from his legion. This act had kindled a burning desire for retribution within the Necromancer. He was preparing to fight back against the Alpha, to reclaim his dominion over death from the encroaching shadow of the werewolf curse. Standing amidst the ruins, the Necromancer raised his arms, addressing the thousands of undead before him. His voice, a chilling echo of his former human self, resonated with authority and dark purpose. He spoke of retribution, of reclaiming the night from the claws of the Alpha. He spoke of an assault to end the werewolf reign, to restore the balance of power in this new world order. As the chapter drew to a close, the scene was set for a monumental confrontation. The Necromancer, with his vast army of undead, readied themselves for a battle that would echo through the annals of this dark era. Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, was building towards a crescendo of conflict, where the very essence of life and death hung in the balance. The Necromancer's undead city, once a silent testament to ruin, now buzzed with the anticipation of war, a war to end the reign of the Alpha. Chapter 4. The Gathering Storm. In the heart of the Alpha's kingdom, an air of urgency permeated the atmosphere as a group of undead werewolf scouts returned. In a guttural, unearthly language, understood only by their kind, they relayed urgent news of a formidable undead army, amassing in strength and numbers under the command of the Necromancer. Upon hearing this, the Alpha let out a terrifying roar that echoed through the ruins, a sound that stirred the undead werewolves into frenzied action. The Alpha, massive and imposing, began to lead its pack out of the city. Hundreds of undead werewolves raced alongside, a fearsome wave of death ready to wash over any who dared oppose them. Meanwhile, the ground shook with the advance of the Necromancer's undead army. Monstrous abominations, their forms a twisted mockery of life, pulled carts filled with vats of a mysterious green liquid. Smaller zombies trudged alongside, their numbers vast and unyielding. Among them, spider-like creatures darted forward, their speed and agility a nightmarish sight. At the rear of the horde, a group of undead, draped in tattered robes, moved with an eerie sense of purpose. Their intelligent gaze betrayed a level of awareness far beyond that of typical zombies, and at the center of this macabre procession, the Necromancer himself, a figure of deathly command. The undead army moved inexorably towards the Alpha's kingdom, driven by a thirst for vengeance. The Necromancer, with a cold, calculating gaze, led the march, his mind set on retribution for the fallen undead. Simultaneously, the undead werewolves, with the Alpha at the forefront, closed the distance towards the Necromancer's legion. Moving with terrifying speed, they tore across the countryside, their primal roars filling the air. The Alpha, surrounded by its pure werewolf guardians, prepared for an epic confrontation. The chapter closed on this impending clash, setting the stage for a battle that would shake the foundations of the post-apocalyptic world. Two unstoppable forces, each led by a being of immense power, were about to collide in a cataclysmic showdown. Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, was moving towards a climax that promised to be both brutal and unforgettable, a clash of undead and beast like none other. Chapter 5. In the shadow of war, in the relative safety of the human camp, a sense of unease permeated the air as scouts rushed back with alarming news. Elena, the camp leader, and Alex, now her second in command, gathered with a sense of urgency to receive the report. The scout, visibly shaken, detailed the massive movement of undead forces. "We saw grotesque abominations, larger than any creature has a right to be, pulling carts filled with ominous substances," he recounted. "Spider-like zombies, fast and agile, skittered around, and among them, zombies with an air of intelligence. It was like nothing we've ever seen." That night, under a tension-filled sky, Alex, Elena, and the elders convened to discuss the implications of this sighting. Varric and Alara listened intently, their age-old wisdom a crucial asset in these uncertain times. "It's clear something monumental is unfolding," Alex said, his face etched with concern. "We need to be prepared in case this army decides to turn its attention towards us." Alara nodded gravely. "We must fortify our defenses further. Our shadow abilities have limitations, especially against these evolved undead creatures." Varric added, "It's not just physical defenses we need. We must consider strategic locations, escape routes, and perhaps even alliances. This is no ordinary enemy. This is an army with purpose and intelligence." Elena, considering their options, spoke up. "Let's focus on reinforcing our perimeter with more silver-based weaponry. We also need to establish watch posts with clear lines of sight. If these creatures can plan, we must be one step ahead." The meeting continued deep into the night, with discussions revolving around tactics, defense strategies, and potential evacuation plans. The sense of impending conflict hung heavily over the camp as they contemplated their next moves. As the chapter drew to a close, the human camp, bathed in the pale moonlight, was a hub, of activity. Everyone, from the youngest to the eldest, contributed to the preparations. In Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, the spectre of war loomed large, and the camp braced itself for what might come next, caught in the crossfire of a battle between unimaginable forces. Chapter 6. The Clash of the Titans. The undead werewolf army halted, their snarls filling the air as they surveyed the advancing zombie army. At the forefront, the alpha werewolf stepped forward, its presence commanding and fearsome. With a roar that echoed through the barren landscape, it signaled the charge. Over 100 undead werewolves, fueled by primal rage, surged forward towards the mass of zombies. The zombies, numbering over 1,000, detached from the main army to meet the werewolves' onslaught. The ensuing battle was savage and brutal. The undead werewolves, with their superior strength and agility, tore through the zombie ranks with ease. Within minutes, the field was littered with the remains of the vanquished zombies, while the werewolves stood unscathed. The Alpha let out a triumphant roar, a signal that was met with deafening responses from its pack. The werewolves reveled in their victory, unaware of the new danger brewing behind them. From the midst of the main zombie army, a barrage of glass vats, filled with the greenish liquid, arced through the air, landing amidst the fallen zombies. The undead werewolves, engaged in battle with the front line of the main zombie horde, failed to notice the transformation happening behind them. As the green liquid seeped into the bodies of the fallen zombies, they began to convulse and reform. Monstrous abominations and mutated zombies, more powerful and grotesque than before, rose from the dead. The front line of undead werewolves, now caught between the advancing zombie army and the newly risen mutants, faced a dire situation. Amidst the chaos, the Alpha sensed the turn of the tide. With a piercing howl, it commanded an all-out assault. The entire pack of undead werewolves, fueled by a mix of fury and desperation, charged mercilessly towards the zombie army. The battle that ensued was catastrophic. The werewolves fought valiantly, but the zombies, bolstered by their newly mutated kin, were relentless. The sound of werewolf cries gradually gave way to an eerie silence as the zombie army continued its advance. In the aftermath, a few hundred zombies gathered around the fallen werewolves. Once more, the greenish substance was poured over the corpses. The werewolves' bodies began to meld with the undead, forming horrific hybrids of zombie and wolf, some with multiple limbs, others with 2 heads, and a few merging into hulking monstrosities. The Alpha, witnessing the desecration of its pack, let out a furious, mournful howl. It signaled the remaining werewolves for a final, desperate charge against the overwhelming zombie force. Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, had reached a pivotal moment, a battle of epic proportions, where the outcome would reshape the balance of power in this nightmarish world. Chapter 7. Retreat and regroup. The battlefield, a tableau of carnage and chaos, bore witness to the relentless clash between the undead werewolves and the ever-evolving zombie army. Amidst the turmoil, the Alpha issued a low, commanding grunt to one of its pure werewolves. With a swift, calculated move, the chosen werewolf darted into the heart of the melee, its paw deliberately dipping into a pool of the greenish goo before swiftly retreating to the Alpha's side. With a powerful roar that resonated with authority and urgency, the Alpha signaled the remaining undead werewolves to fall back. Their numbers had dwindled under the relentless assault of the mutated zombies, and the Alpha's strategic decision to withdraw was marked by a palpable sense of loss. From his vantage point, Dr. Stephen LeStat, the Necromancer, observed the unfolding events with a cold, satisfied grin. For the first time, he sensed the tide turning in his favour, envisioning a future where the Lycan threat could be subdued once and for all. The Alpha and its diminished pack made a strategic retreat, heading back towards their kingdom with heavy hearts. Their pace was hastened by the need to regroup and reassess their strategy in the face of this newfound adversary. Meanwhile, Dr. LeStat's undead army, emboldened by their success in the battle, regrouped with a newfound sense of purpose. The grotesque and mutated soldiers, along with the intelligent zombies, began a steady march towards the Alpha's kingdom. Their advance was methodical and relentless, a moving wall of death poised to engulf what remained of the werewolf dominion. The chapter closed with the two forces, the Alpha's retreating werewolves and the Necromancer's advancing undead army, moving towards an inevitable showdown. The balance of power in the world of Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, was shifting, and the impending conflict between these formidable factions promised to be both brutal and decisive. Chapter 8. The Unfolding Crisis. Back at the human camp, the air was thick with apprehension as fresh reports came in from the scouts. They had witnessed the fierce battle between the undead werewolves and Dr. LeStat's zombie army, including the retreat of the Alpha and its pack. Gathered around a makeshift table, the scouts relayed their observations to Elena, Alex and the elders. The werewolf threat, particularly the Alpha, has always been our primary concern, Alex began, his voice laced with a hint of relief. But this development, it changes everything. Elena nodded, her expression grave. We're still unsure how our shadow powers will affect these new mutated zombies, she said, but we believe they should still be effective against them. The conversation then shifted to the mysterious greenish goo described by the scouts. It seems to reanimate and transform both the undead and the fallen werewolves, one scout explained, the horror of the scene still vivid in his mind. Varric and Alara exchanged a look of deep concern. This is a dire development, Varric said gravely. It means that even in defeat, the undead can utilize this substance to continually replenish and evolve their ranks. Alara added, it's more than just a battle against a relentless enemy. This goo represents a tool for endless resurrection and transformation. It could potentially change the nature of this war. The camp leaders and the elders pondered this new information. The revelation about the greenish goo added an alarming dimension to the conflict, suggesting that their battles against the undead might be far from over, even with apparent victories. As the meeting concluded, a palpable sense of urgency enveloped the camp. Plans were quickly made to gather more intelligence on this green substance and to reinforce their defenses in preparation for any potential threats. The chapter ended with the camp bracing itself for the challenges ahead, aware that the fight for survival had entered a new, more complex phase in Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist. Chapter 9. The Fall of the Kingdom. The Alpha and its remaining pack, weary and diminished, returned to their kingdom, a place that once symbolized their dominion over the land. There, they were met by an injured undead wolf, the sole survivor of a scout group. In a language composed of growls and snarls known only to their kind, it conveyed the existence of the human camp, where the undead werewolves had been defeated. Enraged by this news and sensing the shifting balance of power, the Alpha lashed out in a fit of fury, slashing at the injured scout, silencing it forever. Its eyes then fell upon the werewolf with the greenish goo on its paw. With a dominant grunt, The Alpha commanded the werewolf to lick the substance. The effect was immediate and startling. The pure werewolf convulsed violently, its form expanding and contorting. It grew in size, its muscles bulging, and a feral intensity took over its features, making it appear more monstrous and untamed than ever before. The Alpha, observing this transformation, let out a resounding howl, acknowledging the newfound strength within its pack. Days later, as the undead army, led by the Necromancer, approached the Alpha's kingdom, the stage was set for a brutal confrontation. The remaining undead werewolves, loyal to their leader, positioned themselves to defend their territory. The zombie army, unyielding and relentless, launched its assault without hesitation. The battle that ensued was fierce and unmerciful. The undead werewolves fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. The grotesque abominations, spider-like zombies, and the intelligent undead of the Necromancer's army overwhelmed them. The sounds of the clash were guttural and chilling, echoing the desperation of the werewolves' last stand. As the dust settled and the screams faded, the undead army emerged victorious. The kingdom lay in ruins, the defenders defeated, but amidst the carnage, the Necromancer's minions made a startling discovery. The Alpha and its pure werewolves were nowhere to be found. The chapter closed on this eerie note, leaving the fate of the Alpha and its elite pack shrouded in mystery. Had they fallen in the battle, or had they escaped to fight another day? The story of Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, continued, weaving a tale of shifting power, survival, and the endless cycle of conflict in a world consumed by darkness and chaos. Chapter 10. Shadow Reconnaissance. On the outskirts of the fallen kingdom, a figure stood, enveloped in darkness. Varric, the Elder, was a mere shadow against the backdrop of devastation. His eyes, ancient and discerning, scanned the aftermath of the battle, analyzing the enemy's capabilities with a strategist's mind. Utilizing his ability to move unseen in the shadows, Varric glided effortlessly among the ranks of the undead army. He moved silently, gathering crucial intelligence on their numbers, behavior, and the extent of their mutations. His presence went unnoticed, a ghost amidst the chaos. As he prepared to depart, a large, hulking abomination caught his eye. The creature stood sentry outside the city, pushing a cart that appeared to be laden with the mysterious greenish goo. Curiosity piqued, Varric murmured to himself, "Let's try this." Approaching the creature from the shadows, he passed through it in his shadow form. To his satisfaction, the abomination collapsed instantly, lifeless and still. "Well, at least this still works," Varric noted, a hint of relief in his voice. With swift, silent movements, Varric returned to the camp, darting from shadow to shadow, a wraith in the night. Upon arrival, he sought out Elena and Alex to deliver his report. Gathered in the command tent, Varric relayed his findings. The undead army is vast and varied in its monstrosities. However, our shadow powers remain effective against them. This knowledge could be pivotal in our strategy, he concluded. Elena and Alex absorbed the information, their minds racing with the implications. The revelation that the Elder's powers could still turn the tide against certain undead foes offered a glimmer of hope in an otherwise grim outlook. As the chapter drew to a close, the camp braced itself for the challenges ahead. The knowledge Varric brought back was invaluable, yet the future remained fraught with danger and uncertainty. Crimson Dawn, the Last Alchemist, was poised to continue its narrative arc, promising more intrigue, conflict, and survival against insurmountable odds. Thank you for joining me on this chilling journey. If your thirst for the unknown and the unexplained is still unquenched, I invite you to delve deeper into the abyss of terror. Just beyond the veil of reality, another story awaits to send shivers down your spine. Dare to join me in the next video, where the unknown becomes known and the unseen seen. Until then, keep the lights dim and your mind open. This is Professor Shadow, signing off.